class of 1990, Bob Griese. How are you, Bob?
I'm good, Rich. It's interesting listening to you guys talking about the National Lazy Day.
Yes.
It sounded the way you guys were going back and forth that's exactly what you guys were honoring.
Well, you know what, Bob? We're veterans. You might say that some of the guys that cross my set right here, they would be in the pro lazy Hall of Fame,
right?
For the last 26 years, I think. Just kind of like you being in Canton, Bob. So you hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head. What is your take on Ryan Tannehill, Bob? What do you think of him?
I like Ryan, and this is his fifth year. I remember my first 4 years weren't very good, but then when Coach Shula came to the Dolphins, we had a new coach. Coach Shula was 38 years old. Adam Gase is 38 years old. He's supposed to be a quarterback guru. We didn't know how good a head coach Coach Shula was going to be, and we don't know about Adam as far as a head coach. But I think as far as helping quarterbacks, he's got a track record of that. So I think Ryan's going to have a good year, especially with he's finally got not only a healthy offensive line but some depth in that offensive line. He's got some good receivers. The only the question mark we've got is the running back with Lamar Miller leaving and going to Houston. We picked up Arian Foster from Houston, so we kind of traded running backs with them. And this kid Ajayi is supposed to be pretty good, so we'll see how he does.
Well, I mean, but Bob, that is some very high praise or a very, glass half full approach that maybe Gase could be the Shula to Tannehill being you right here in that regard. What needs to happen in that quarterback coach relationship that did seem to click for you and Shula in your first year?
Well, I think he's got to take ownership of the position. I think before his first 3 or 4 years, the offense was more of a moving, shifting. Trying to fool the defense, offense by movement, by alignment, by quickness before the snap, and that's fine. But you can't check off. I mean, if you're going to if you get to the line of scrimmage with 10 seconds on the play clock, and now you got some movement going and you don't know what the defense is going to react to that movement on offense, so you can't check off. I didn't. The guys that check off the most, we were talking, Jim Kelly was talking about this when we were at the Hall of Fame last week. When I got to the line of scrimmage, I didn't want anybody to move on offense because I wanted to read the defense and then decide, is this play I got called good against that defense, or should I check off to something that I really like against that defense? When you get all this movement on offense, you can't check off. And this year, I think they're going to let Ryan check off a lot more, let him own the offense a little bit and let it be his.
Okay. And so do you think he's got the ability to perform better by putting it in his hands in that way, that Gase giving him the reins a little bit more, that this has been the missing ingredient for a consistent Ryan Tannehill?
No question.
Huh.
He's a tall, good-looking, smart kid. And he can handle it.
And what about the whole shadow of Marino thing, Bob? Do we make too much of it in the media, or really is that something that really is a tangible for a quarterback to have to deal with? I know that you came before, Dan, but you've been in this situation, you've been in the scene. Yeah, is that a tangible?
Different eras. And it's hard to compare this era with what we did back in the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different ball game. The rules are different.
Right.
It's tough to compare this offense, this team to the Marino's teams of the 80s and early 90s. Those teams they had Duper and Clayton. They didn't have much of a running game, but they had a lot of guys that could pass block, and one of the best passers ever to come down the pike in Marino. And that's what they went with, and so it's just hard to compare. How would Marino have done back with my group? Well, he would, we ran a lot because that was our strength.
Mm-hmm.
And how would I have done with Marino's group? Well, probably not nearly as well as he did. So,
right.
Yeah, I think you have to find. All right, look at your guys, see what their assets are, see what they do best, see what they don't do so well, and then do what they do best and try to work that into your offense.
Bob Griese joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. What are you seeing out of the Dolphins defense for this year, Bob? What do you think on that side of the ball?
Well, they got to be better. They 2 years ago they were pretty good. Last year they weren't so good. They were near the bottom in all the defensive categories. The one that sticks out the most is rushing defense. They were 28th out of 32 teams. They were 31st in sacks. They were 30th in taking the ball away from the offense. Third downs, they were near the bottom. Vance Joseph comes in, defensive coordinator. Everything looks good so far. I mean, they're dominating in practice. They're dominating the offense. But this time of year when when the offense is just getting together, especially when you're learning, the Dolphin offense is learning a new system.
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, though, in the same way I'm talking with Bob Griese here on the Rich Eisen Show, in the same way that it's about Tannehill, it's also about Ndamukong Suh. The guy makes a ton of money, and he has reportedly said essentially to everybody in the locker room that I'm the guy on defense that's running the show here. I'm going to be here for a long time, so you gotta get on board with what I'm selling. The question is, what is he selling when it all comes down to it, Bob?
Well, it's tough. Okay. I'm glad he wants to do that. He wants to be a leader, but he's a defensive tackle. He's in there with two guards and a center versus the two guards and a center where he can be double teamed every time. That may free up the guy outside. Cam Wake, before he got injured last year, was having a good year. But it's your defensive ends and your corners that have to play well. Suh may force two guys to block him, and if they don't, he's going to sack the quarterback more often than not. But we got a lot of changes on defense. Brent Grimes is gone. Olivier Vernon is gone. The corner on the other side, we got two new corners on this. There's a lot of new guys in there, and I think the key is Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, using Ndamukong Suh, losing Wake, Koamisi, Rashad Jones.
Mario Williams is in the mix, too.
Yeah, Mario Williams. He didn't have a good year last year in Buffalo, but that now is the time for the redemption.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, Bob, about your son Brian and what it was like replacing Elway now that there seems to be a host of guys that Denver's auditioning in a way to replace Peyton Manning in Denver, and what Brian went through at that time and what Sanchez or Simeon or even Paxton Lynch might be going through in Denver right now.
Well, they can't. Replacing Peyton, nobody can do that. I mean, Peyton, his last year of playing football out there in Denver, his skill set was a lot lower than the average that he maintained throughout his career. But you don't want to look to replace him. Nobody's going to replace him. You just have to do what you do best, and the staff has to find out if we can run the same system, do it as well as Peyton did, or do we have to find out what your strengths are on offense and meld everything to that and do it that way, because there's not many Marinos around. There's not many Peyton Mannings around.
Yeah, a couple more for you and hitting the Wayback Machine. How's Coach Shula doing right now?
He's doing a lot better. He was he was in the hospital there for a couple of weeks, but he's out and he's better. And I called him a couple of days ago, and he was giving me hell, and I was giving it right back to him.
So is he back at the track with you and Hank Goldberg? Are you back at the track yet, Bob?
Gulfstream. We're in North Carolina right now
okay.
for the summer. So
okay.
He's itching to go. Let me put it that way.
Okay, good. And what's your favorite game you call with Keith Jackson? Which one leaps out to you when you're sitting there with Keith Jackson, calling all those classic college football games on ABC, Bob?
Oh, no, they're going to tell you.
That's right. Which one?
I guess it would have to be the Rose Bowl game in the '98 Rose Bowl game when Brian is quarterbacking the undefeated and number 1 ranked Michigan Wolverines, and they're in the Rose Bowl and they're ranked number 1 against Washington State,
Ryan Leaf,
who just happened to be Keith Jackson's alma mater.
Oh, right.
And at the end of the game, the Michigan was winning the game, was going to be the national champion, and Brian had a good game. And there must like 10 seconds left, and one of the assistants handed Keith a 5x7 file card, and Keith said, "Oh, Nelly, you want to know who the MVP is? I'm standing right next to his proud daddy."
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Keith is an all-timer, man, and you and he were just terrific. I'm glad you didn't choose the Cordell Stewart game, quite frankly. So thank you for not mentioning that, Bob. Thank you.
Keith, he's one of the best. I'm trying to get him to write his memoirs, and
please do it.
Yeah, I know.
Please do it. Bob, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
All right, Rich.
Really
we'll
do.
talk to you.
You bet. That's Bob Griese.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.